Aqua Teen Hunger Force tonight at 11:15. That's right.
This is a good beat. Why aren't you dancing?
Dancing is forbidden. 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 Dancing is forbidden.
Yoo-hoo, running crew, welcome to Dancing is Forbidden, an Aqua Teen Hunger Force exploration. I am Ronnie, and on this podcast, I am usually watching through and talking about every Aqua Teen episode, but this week, we had a special surprise guest, Dave Willis himself, co-creator of Aqua Teen Hunger Force, voice of Carl, Meatwad, Ignignokt, and a million other characters.
Oh my god! Holy shit!
Yeah, that's my reaction as well. What exactly did I tell Dave that made him say, oh my god, holy shit? Well, you'll have to listen and find out. Some of the topics we get into are Aqua Teen Forever Plantasm, so, you know, a little spoiler warning there if you haven't seen the film yet. We also talk about AquaDonk Side Pieces. I ask Dave some episode-specific questions, some of the questions that I have not found answers to in my year plus of covering the show. We touch on Dave's writing partners on Adult Swim throughout the years. And finally, at the very end, so make sure you listen all the way through, we get Carl's thoughts on Foreigner's upcoming farewell tour.
Cold as ice, baby.
I mean, it's Dave Willis. I don't think he needs an introduction. Let's jump in and ask Dave some questions. Let's talk about this thing that was just released called Plantasm, the much anticipated Aqua Teen film here, and the full title on this is Aqua Teen Forever Plantasm. I was wondering if you guys were playing with a longer title for this one, or did you know that you wanted to name it something short and concise?
I don't ever think we really thought about it very much.
Sure.
I mean, Matt Maiellaro is like a huge Plantasm fan. He used to have a clock on his wall from the ill-remembered Plantasm 4, Lord of the Dead, Lord of the Dawn, Dawn of the Lord. I don't remember the name of the title, but
and remember, if this one doesn't scare you, you're already dead. Phantasm, Lord of the Dead.
He certainly is, when the idea was kind of coming into shape, he was like Plantasm.
Mm-hmm.
Like, absolutely. And I think we like the Aqua Teen Forever, just the concept. I mean, it's the theme, So
I noticed in the 2007 film, there is a tanning store that they go into, and it's called Plantasm. I didn't know if you guys were behind that or if that was like a complete coincidence.
Well, I don't know. I don't even remember that. Bob Pettit did all of our backgrounds, though, and he'd always try to put puns and jokes in the back. And Bob is very friendly with me and Matt, and I'm sure he probably put that in there as just sort of a nod to Matt.
Sure. Okay, so with AquaDonk Side Pieces earlier this year, the whole premise of that was kind of showing what the Aqua Teens and their villains were up to in 2022, but I was most excited about Plantasm because we would get to see how yourself and Matt would write for Aqua Teen in 2022, and I think the two biggest examples of that really are the recasting of Boxy Brown and also having women characters that aren't just there to be, lusted after or harassed by the Aqua Teens. So circling back to the Boxy Brown thing, of course, you have Killer Mike. And I was listening to the commentary, and you said that your boss made you do that. I was wondering how true that was, or just how that kind of came to be.
Well, I wouldn't say he really made me do it in that sort of sense. I mean, you'll recall there was a controversy maybe a couple of years ago with the show Central Park, where they had an African-American character who was voiced by, I want to say Jillian Bell, maybe, I'm not sure, but a white actor. And it was pointed out, and it kind of became a thing in the media, and understandably so, honestly. It's like sort of, it's kind of weird. So he mentioned it when we first wrote the script, like, maybe someone else ought to play Boxy Brown. And because I always did it. I always pitch shifted it and sort of did this kind of shaft thing. But
Sure was, brother. We raised the roof all up in there.
we really didn't give it a second worth of thought. It was like, yeah, this is a fun stunt cast opportunity, and maybe we can comment on how things have changed a little bit. But Boxy just identified as black. He's a box. I mean, he can't, when I did Squidbillies, when we switched voices on Squidbillies, people just lost their mind. I was like, he's a squid. He can be anybody. Just relax. Everybody relax.
I want to say, though, I was so glad to see Boxy there because that was a character I thought we would never see again. So I'm glad you guys found a way to bring him back in a 2022 friendly way.
Yeah. Yeah.
The women in the film, I did notice that Carl and Shake don't really interact with any women in the film. So I think that's why you guys can get away with not having them just be objects.
Shake is probably an incel.
Yeah. But, as we saw with Svetlana, he wants women to cook for him at least.
Yeah, but he's saving up for calf implants. a synthetic jawline. He thinks that's the issue. Carl just thinks that women are stuck up.
How was that for you guys, though? Because whenever I hear you guys talk about writing for women in the past, you guys were just like, we wouldn't be good at doing that. But in this film, I thought the women characters were great. So I was wondering how that was for you guys writing for them.
Well, you know what? I think we just joked about that. I think that was a big joke. And the show became very when you're doing a show where it's not like a massive group of people, where it's just a tiny group and it's just me and Matt, we just tend to go down avenues that maybe aren't traditionally female. I mean, I know we have some female fans, but that's always been a joke of ours in interviews, how one-dimensional our female characters sometimes are.
Yeah.
But yeah, nobody wants to see nobody wants to see that in a movie in 2022. So
So Plantasm introduces two new alien races. We have the Japongoloids and the Fraptaculans. I was wondering what the inspiration for those two new alien races were.
I think it seemed like a very funny idea to have two races that just completely cannot stand each other. Like, just have galactic, like a history of a millennium of wars against each other. And yet they're both tricked into coming to Earth to work at an amazing factory. And they have to work together and they have to form a union together when they despise each other. And it just sort of seemed like it was just a rich, but that's it. It's just kind of...
Did you have any input on like how they look or like their physical attributes?
Oh, yeah. We talked about one of them, one of the races just constantly emitting slime and the other race just constantly like molting like 5 times a day. And it just came out of a husk of just like a pork rind type husk. But we worked with the designers at Bento Box and Craig Harton and got those designs to a place where we liked it. And we loved the idea too. I mean, there was a lot of stuff in the current news about like, Amazon and people trying to unionize at Starbucks. And there was a big Amazon warehouse vote going on in Alabama at the time. And, and you'd hear stories of people working there and having to sleep in their cars and stuff. And it just, we're never ripped from the headlines, obviously, but, it just sort of seemed like, oh, this could be an interesting way to connect all this.
Well, you touch on an interesting topic because I've heard you discuss the whole amazing aspect of the film, but I haven't heard you talk about the plant aspect. My suspicion was you guys were maybe kind of inspired by the popularity of gardening during COVID, because I assume lots of people were getting shipped plants at the time. But I was wondering where the whole plant aspect came from.
Not too much of it. I did remember, like, in some ways, Amazon has made things so much easier for so many people. But in other ways, you're thinking like, God, how much waste does this service Generate. And I remember reading an article like 10 years ago about some company where these young guys were coming out of, it was RISD or something. They were designing packaging based on these very fast growing fungus, and they could put the fungus into a mold, and all of a sudden, what ordinarily you would do with styrofoam, you had this biodegradable fungus. But, you know, they had to spray it, make sure it didn't smell. They had to do all this other stuff. But it seemed kind of like, wow, that would be remarkable if that could be something utilized. And then I thought, you know, you just think about all the boxes all around and stuff. And it's like, what if you did just make a box out of seeds and it would just plant? But I think there was also this dual thing where, you know, vegetarians are vegetarians for a various number of reasons. And I've dabbled in it over the years, never fully committed, but I completely understand it. I never did, just maybe because of pure selfish joy in eating meat sometimes. But I thought, like, what, you know, for those that are vegetarian, that do it just for the well-being of animals, like, what if they discovered that vegetables had a soul and like had a spirit and had emotions and families? And I was like, I think that kind of came into it too, in a weird sort of way. Otherwise, it could be a pretty boring movie if the plants just stay there and don't say anything or do anything. But yeah, I think those are, pun intended, the seeds for our idea.
Perfect. Moving on to the theme song for this film, which I absolutely love, even without the Aqua Teen aspect. I think it's such a great song.
You could get the Meatwad, teeth get knocked, you got a beef, hope you rethought. Frolic, cock the Glock if you wanna see God. Master shaker, make him eat your maker quickly. Drop a hot card on your couch, it's our city. Hunger force the committee to keep it lit.
I've spoken to MC Chris about your input on the songs he did for the show, and I know from the special features that you guys were involved with Mastodon and Cameo for their music in the 2007 film. I was wondering what input, if any, you had on the Run the Jewels theme for this film.
Zero. We can't really, I don't think we could really write, like even the MC Chris stuff. I mean, we wrote the original song and he just completely took it and he kept the meat of it, the idea and everything, obviously, and how it fit into the show. But he, you know, completely reworked it and made it this sort of fun, special thing that would just never, I mean, we'll write rhymes and it just won't, it's, someone can't spit them the way we write them. It's just not going to work. And yeah, and we, in later years, we sort of took to changing the titles of the show and the themes. It was just a fun way to sort of repackage. And Jason DeMarco, our head of on air, is, I mean, I think he is responsible for getting those two guys together from Run the Jewels. He connected them on something and they just became friends. And next thing you know, they're putting out an album. And Killer Mike had already done an album for William Street, which is something that William Street Records, which I think Jason was kind of spearheading. And so I think their history is deep with Adult Swim and William Street. And it just seemed like just such a natural because they're so great. And yeah, and we were thrilled with it. And they were awesome. I mean, Killer Mike is kind of like the mayor of Atlanta in a weird sort of way, you know? And so it's really nice to sort of connect it all.
Mm-hmm, sure. Besides the full Moon and Night text script, which you've spoken about a lot, is there anything else that you wanted to do for the film that you were unable to, just because of budgetary or time constraints?
No, but that texting thing was huge. I mean, we came in and the contract was like 70-minute movie. And I was like, yeah, this could be really, really fun. And this would definitely be something fun to watch. I mean, I'm always looking for something like that. You know, it's like everything is too long. Because of the technology and because of streaming and because of no constraints, I think things have gotten bloated, you know, and ordinarily if I see a movie is 75 minutes long, I'm like, oh, this must be terrible. Some editor really had to do a hack job to just kind of get this watchable. But I love how brisk it is. But yes, the texting is the one thing. I mean, the marketing department was like, we love this. We cannot afford to do it. So for the longest time, I was like, can we embed an ad and get somebody to underwrite it? Because the only way this really works and is really funny is if your phone just almost overheats and dies from these texts. If you have like 400 texts, you know, and you have to shut it off and put it in the other room. But, you know, whatever. We got to do it. It was cool. We're happy with it.
So I was wondering if there was any aspect of the 2007 film that you thought was better executed than in Plantasm. If there was something in Colon movie film that you were maybe more proud of.
No, I really don't.
Well, if I could ask, let's go back to 2007 and say that you just finished working on the Colon movie film, and through some miracle of time travel, you somehow got to see in 2007 Plantasm. What do you think that you would have said in 2007 about Plantasm if you just miraculously got to see it?
I would like to think that I would have thought it was a better movie then, too. And I think we were also probably moving so fast and still just we were probably just drunk on our own fart fumes, you know, you know, in 2007. And, you know, I think our bosses even like, you know, I'd have probably told you to, you know, do some punch-ups in this. And I think, I mean, we vary in what we say about it. I mean, I think Matt says it's a very fan service film, and I think that's true. But I just think we just got probably self-indulgent. And so it's got a lot of cool things about it, but it's just kind of a bloated mess in some ways. And I feel like Plantasm is so much more of just an enjoyable, fun, just real brisk, just a breeze, man. It just goes down so easy, you know?
When I saw you mention the running length before the film came out, I was really excited about that, I guess, just to see, you know, since you guys had these kind of strict guidelines in terms of time, what you could do with that. And I think it really, like, on all levels, I just loved it. Like I said, I like it more than the 2007 film. And my wife watched it with me, and she has seen some Aqua Teen, but not a ton. And she really liked the film as well. So
great.
Hopefully other people are feeling the same way about it.
I hope so too, you know, and if people don't buy it, hopefully they'll rent it, and it'll eventually, I guess, end up on streaming, and, you know, and we'll see. I think it's a real unique story too. I just don't think you really see, you just kind of get sick of the same stories. And I think if the algorithm, you know, with streaming, the algorithm is just going to figure out what you want and start feeding you that thing. I don't know. If Plantasm does well, they'll do another one, and you know, and they're doing the Metalocalypse one and the Venture Brothers one. I think it's a brilliant idea, you know, just these short little movies for that hardcore fan base out there, you know, that has been craving this stuff. So,
Well, if we could move on to AquaDonk a little bit.
Sure.
Credited on every one of those shorts are, in the music department, DJ AT and T's. I don't know if you could tell me who that is, because I couldn't find out who they are, but they did the music for AquaDonk, I guess.
Well, I can tell you, it's a guy that has worked with us for a long time.
Okay.
I don't know the two people. I know one of them is a guy that has worked with us for a very long time. He started with us as an intern, worked his way up, and I don't know if he credited himself that way because he does not want to be mentioned. I'm gonna take a chance and say though that he would want that. And it was Nick Ignignokt.
Oh, sure. Okay.
I don't know. Nick's just kind of the guy that if we have a unique problem that we need solving, he just is sort of capable of a lot of just crazy, amazing stuff. He can make music. He can do art for us. He can
film you and Matt while you write a script.
But he's very, Nick's like this crazy out of the box, like talent. Like there's just so much stuff he can do, and he will always continually surprise you. And we kind of had a tight budget on these.
Right, of course.
You know, how can you, Nick's amazing. Nick is amazing.
Speaking of the budget, I had Nick Gibbons on the show, and we were talking specifically about the Moonmaster 9 AquaDonk, and Nick mentioned that that you guys at one point were like okayed for 4 to 5 minutes on the shorts, and then that, I guess, got dialed back to like 2 minutes. I don't know if you know exactly what he's talking about, but I was just wondering if you found any of the shorts to be too difficult to pack into 2 minutes.
No, I mean, I always feel like our episode ideas could be 2 minutes if they had to be, and they're usually better when they're longer, 11 minutes, but it's like it's plumping out something. And that's kind of the hardest thing, is to find the idea that you would want to write about. But I don't know if there was anything particular about that per se. I think they just sort of said, how would you like to make some villain side stories? And we were like, cool. And it was just thrown out there 3 to 5 minutes or whatever. But I think everyone at the network felt really strongly that it was like, any more than 3 minutes, and it kind of, I don't think it was a real comment on the creative so much as it's just like, that's about the right size of a meal.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, you don't want to, I'm going to compare us to steak, because that's how I think of us as steak, as a really just well marbled sirloin. But you don't want a 60-ounce steak. 12, 14 ounces, that's all you need. And you filled up and you feel good. No, shorter is always better if it's all equal. And yeah, 3 minutes feels about right.
Mm-hmm. Back to the Moonmaster 9 AquaDonk. In that one, we have Samuel of the Cosmos, played by Nick Gibbons, being texted by the Moonanites. I assume that you guys came up with that first, right? Did you write that episode first and then go on to do the texting element in the film?
I guess we did. Yeah, I guess so.
So you inspired yourselves?
I guess so. I didn't even think about that, really.
Really?
Yeah, I had not really made that connection. I just remember when we were writing the movie thinking about, and honestly, when we were writing the movie, I think initially the idea was you would just get texted. Your phone would be hounded. And then, of course, it made perfect sense for it to be the Moonanites doing it. But I think we did have that idea kind of going in, but I don't think we ever connected it with that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah, it's possible. Yeah.
Read the new text we sent you. It will make us laugh.
Read it and wait, boy.
My balls are small.
I can't hear you across the vacuum of space.
Scream it all the way to England.
So, with the MCP pants, AquaDonk, obviously I understand why you guys used the spider asset of him, but if it were up to you, would you have liked to given him a new form, or were you just happy to stick with the spider?
It felt like too much pipe delay for a 3 minute thing. Like, oh, he's also been reincarnated as this thing. Certainly that would have made sense for longtime fans of the show, but I think we also wanted these to immediately, for someone who doesn't know the show, okay, they got to buy that it's a spider that likes to rap, but once they get past that, they can get past that. I feel like things have gotten plenty surreal since when we first started making the show. But I'm sure that might have crossed our minds, but I think we probably scratched that out pretty early on.
Right. 2022 has been a big year for you, not just because of AquaDonk and Plantasm, but also with the YPF shorts that recently came out, which were great. I loved all of them. And the thing that really struck me about those, because you guys were going from live action to animation, is that you really took full advantage of the animation aspect, because every single one of those shorts that I was watching, I was like, I don't know how they would do this in live action. So I thought that was cool that you didn't just try to one-to-one it into animation. You went bigger with it because animation allowed you to. Mm-hmm. And I'm kind of wondering if you can speak to how working on the AquaDonks differed from working on the YPF shorts. Was one of them easier or harder than the other one?
Yeah, I would say in some ways the AquaDonks might have been easier just because we had a system of how we made our shows. And we did it that way for years and years and years. And without getting too complex and boring and production-centric, we never made a cartoon the way people make cartoons, which is start with storyboards and then make an animatic. We do a radio play of the audio, but we never had a storyboard artist. And early on, we had a very good editor, Jay Edwards. And so we just talked with Jay about making a animatic with Photoshop files of a background, Photoshop files of the characters. And that's how we would build the rough cut of the show. And for better or worse, we just didn't fix what wasn't broke, even as technology improved over time. And it was like, at a certain point, it would have made sense to move over to storyboards. So we did AquaDonk the same way we had always done Aqua Teen. The only difference is Bob Pettit, our longtime background artist, I think he was at that point just so burned out on us, on our show, that I think he was. But so Bento Box, did that. And then Plantasm, we straight up did like a classic animated movie. We storyboarded the thing. And we did that with Your Pretty Face as well. But we worked with a new studio on Your Pretty Face, just because we wanted to try something different. And working remotely with people that you haven't worked with is, there's a curve to that. And I also think, we're probably not the biggest budget. So we're probably not, they probably got a skeleton crew working on our thing. And I think they're probably maybe younger and there's some inexperience there. And so there are certain elements of communication where you're saying, they might take you very literally, where what you really want for them to do is to go nuts with it. You want them to show off what they can do, and you can dial that back and carve that down to what you need. But you don't want someone to go, look over their shoulder as you're hovering and go here and just inch it along here. So it takes a while to figure out that communication, but the studio we used was fantastic, and they really brought those characters to life. And of course we had Christy Caracas, who, is the lead guy on Super Jail and Ballmasters, and Christy designed the characters and kind of laid out like a blueprint for the studio. So it was nice reinventing, but AquaDonk was just like getting the band back together. We used people that we've been using forever. And so everybody knows their role. Everybody knows what to do. Everybody comes with one voice, and it was just like playing the hits. It was awesome.
So speaking of YPF, which you co-write with, or co-created really, with Casper Kelly, you've created 3 big shows for Adult Swim, with Aqua Teen with Matt Maiellaro, with YPF with Casper Kelly, and then Squidbillies with Jim Fortier. So you've had these 3 writing partners, and I was wondering if you can kind of speak to each of their kind of like what they bring to the table, and also how they complement your creative style.
Oh, wow. Well, that's an interesting. I mean, all 3 guys are just insanely funny people and insanely creative people. Matt was just very funny, and we just clicked in a way. And I also felt like Matt doesn't judge. He just sort of tries to build on your idea. And we would write scripts, and there wasn't a whole lot of no, not that. Like there was it was all very, like the rule of improv, I guess, that you always hear. Yes, and, I mean, he would run the keyboard, and it just yes, and we would just roll and just get going. And we complemented each other very well in that respect. And I think we really enjoyed working together, and we came up with Aqua Teen together out of that Space Ghost world. And we just click. I mean, we had not worked together for years before AquaDonk, and once we got back in the saddle, it was just instant. Jim is a great writer, and he's very funny, but he's also very particular about cartoons. He has a very specific voice, and it also helped that Jim and I, even though we had never really worked together, we went to the same high school. So we kind of, we didn't know each other that well then, but then we got to know each other through college. And then we became very good friends after college, living in Atlanta, and then he started working at Cartoon, and we were just really good friends. And he's probably maybe more like me in a lot of respects, particular about certain things in production. So I think we had a little bit of a curve to get over that.
Mm-hmm.
But we spoke from sort of the same place, and he's probably the funniest guy, like in person. You know, he's not really a performer, but as just a pure funny dude, he can be hysterical. So once we kind of got over figuring out, well, how will this work? Because I think he and I both like to do the same type of things on a production. Whereas Matt drills down on the mix, and I'll drill down on the edit. And, whereas in Squids, I mean, both Jim and I drill down on the edit, once we figured that out, though, I felt like we really got rolling well with that show. And then Chris, it was just kind of accidental. We would just get coffee, and I just sort of admired his mind and his writing. And, he had this idea, and I grafted this other idea onto it. And we realized we'd never be able to make it at Adult Swim. And we pitched it to Super Deluxe, which was around at the time down the hall. And it was called 10,000 Virgins. And it was sort of the seed of what became Your Pretty Face is Going to Hell. And we just enjoyed making that together and enjoyed getting to know each other through that process. And he's kind of like we kind of have like a little coffee clatch. I mean, even though we haven't really hung out that much during COVID, I mean, I feel like I talk to him on the phone every 2 days about movies or something, and I also think it's a similar thing. He's got very strong opinions about certain things, and we both sort of share a passion for certain elements of production. I mean, he and I both wanted to be directors, so this was a way for us to direct. Let's pitch this TV show that's live action, and then we'll direct. And it's difficult to direct with someone when you haven't done that before. And we figured out a way to do that. And then at a certain point, we're like, let's trade off shows so that we each have an opportunity to just run the ship, But I mean, I think in each circumstance, you have to be able to put your ego in check. You have to know when your partner is like, hey, they're not saying this because they're an asshole. They're saying this because they genuinely are feeling this way. So maybe you should evaluate your passion for it and see why they said that,
Mm-hmm.
And it's a learning experience, but I feel like it certainly makes you stronger, and it fills out your blind spots. And so each one is different, but each one, I mean, I love working with each guy. I would work with each guy in a second. And I feel lucky that these people were here.
Right.
Because I know I wouldn't have gotten there on my own. It made all the difference in the world in my career.
I have a few episode-specific questions here. So you've actually contributed to the podcast. I don't know if you're aware or not, because I don't know how that conversation looked. But I reached out to Ned asking about who Hayden Ward was, because she popped up doing voice work in the episode The Clowning, and it was really bugging me because she was the first real female character on Aqua Teen, and I couldn't find anything. And then he reached out to you, and you responded to him, so I found out that she got you guys hooked up with Dana Snyder. But then I reached out to MC Chris, and my understanding is she's also the friend who introduced MC Chris to you as well.
Yes.
So she's kind of like this unsung hero of Aqua Teen. So I was so happy, and I'm really thankful that you responded to Ned about that, because I was so happy to share her story. But in season 1, we had Svetlana, who, I don't know if she's really a character or not, because she doesn't even speak any real language, but she is voiced by Rita McGrath. I don't know if you could tell me who that is.
Well, let me take one step back too and say Hayden. So Hayden was my girlfriend for a time.
Mm-hmm.
And she would always tell me about Dana. And Dana went to college
with Ashley,
who was the other in Robo Sitter, Sarah Silverman and Ashley Ward. But all right, so all that, all right? Because Hayden went to the UCB for a while, and she hooked me up with all these crazy people. No, that was a woman that worked in the building who...
Oh, Rita?
Knew how to speak Russian. I don't know if she was of Russian descent. That's the only reason we cast her. But she was great. She was great. We were like, how do you say this in Russian? And she's fantastic.
So she was speaking a real language then?
Yeah, Russian. Mm-hmm.
I tried to look it up, and like people were like, "Oh, I speak whatever language, and that's not it, or whatever." So, wow, I thought it was gibberish, but I guess I am wrong.
I don't know if there's a difference between Russian and Chechen. Chechen is slightly funnier a word, but I think it's straight up Russian.
Cool. Well, thank you. Yeah, because her IMDb credit was just that one episode, so I didn't have anything to find about Rita. But I'm glad you're able to tell me that. On HBO Max, the episode Total Recall, the one where they kill Carl with the toilet, and then they hook his head up to Frylock's computer, and at one point, Meatwad's like, oh, he's dropping F-bombs. And if you pause it, you can see that there are F-bombs on the screen, like he is saying fuck. But on HBO Max, they edited that out, and they changed it. I was wondering if
they changed the joke?
They changed all the F-bombs on the screen, so I guess...
Oh, they blur it or something? Or
no, they changed it to completely new words. So I was going to ask if you guys were behind that, but I take it you were not, that they just had some random person go in and change it.
No, but that's what I'll check out right now.
Yeah.
After we're done.
Yeah, they changed it completely. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I did not know that. But yeah, that sounds like something we might have, I don't know. I mean, or one of our artists would have done that.
Yeah. No, I was 10 years old sitting there with a DVD remote trying to pause it to see if I could see it. And sure enough, there was F-bombs on the screen. And I was so happy because I sat there for like 3 minutes trying to do it. So moving on, in the episode Spirit Journey Formation Anniversary, there are the 2 Scorpions, and they are credited as BB Leland, but rumor has it that it's actually John DiMaggio voicing them. I don't know. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
We were non-union and
right, yeah. Yeah, I just didn't
So understand all that. All right, yeah.
My next question is about Tom Scharpling, because you guys worked with him on Aqua Teen. He did the voice of Willie Nelson, which that character visually has come back a lot, that onion spider thing. And then he did the interstitials of the documentary of you guys writing that episode, the cloning. He kind of was dressed up as a king, introducing the segment and stuff. And you've been on his show, the Best Show. I was wondering why you guys didn't do more together, because it seemed like you were pretty friendly.
Oh, I'm so pretty friendly with Tom. I mean, Tom's, I try to give him a call maybe like once a year, and check in, or he'll text me every once in a while. I mean, he actually, you saw Plantasm. I mean, we should give him a credit because we had written that Space Jam 3 for another NBA player who was a big animation fan. And I thought for sure this guy would do it. But then he got a job coaching and couldn't do it. And so I was talking with Tom. Tom used to write for NBA Inside Stuff, maybe, or Slam, maybe. So I was just asking Tom, like, who would be the funny Tom? Yeah, I used Tom as a consultant.
Gotcha. Okay, cool.
On that, but yeah, no, I love Tom. I love Best Show. I read his biography. His biography is great. It's really entertaining. I love Worcester. It just didn't work out. Well, no, I don't think we ever. But he did a special for Adult Swim, one of those 4 a.m. things that didn't. I think he was sort of saw it as a pilot, and I guess it didn't. I don't know if it got picked up or it didn't get picked up. But I don't ever work in development. I don't ever get privy to that stuff. So, but yeah, no. Tom's of his own. He's built his own universe with Best Show. I think Best Show is sort of his gift to the world in a way.
Right? Yeah. He's busy.
Yeah, Tom's like this real unique comedic voice. Like he was back when we first created Aqua Teen. He reached out to me, and it was really nice to have somebody that was not just sort of somebody that PR set up. Just reaching out, like, talking about a little bit of a kinship. Like he came down and we had this huge Adult Swim party, and he came down as a part of it. And, so it sort of seemed like we were sort of traveling in the similar universes. And I don't know, Tom's just kind of a genius, but he's kind of got his own thing going with Best Show, and so, yeah, I'd be thrilled to do anything with Tom ever. I mean, that's the reason why we brought Tom in on, is because he was kind of like the first person who reached out to us that was somebody that was actually working in the field. You know, he was a writer on Monk, and he would tell us, like, there were these older guys in the room. Like, he showed Aqua Teen to these older guys in the room, and they just trashed it, just said it was just such a piece of shit. And Tom was just like, I think I know what these guys are doing. And, you know, so I don't know. It was just nice to have a fan where you were like, oh yeah, this is great. You know, yes. And then of course he sends his CDs and they're brilliant, you know, and you're like, oh, the Gorch and Rod Rock and Rule, you know, and all that. And yeah, it was nice.
You've spoken about how a lot of early Aqua Teen scripts are derived from rejected Space Ghost scripts, most notably Dumber Dolls, where Space Ghost had this doll that dances into a fire to kill itself to get away from him. I don't know if you could remember any other scripts that were derived from Space Ghost scripts. For example, there's the episode Dumber Days, where Meatwad, he thinks he's smarter than he really is, and he gets like all these magic powers.
Not that one. Do you mind if I look up the first 10 episodes? I just want to...
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I want to look at... man, you are really bringing it. No, I don't think so. You know, Dumber Dolls definitely was kind of very born out of a Space Ghost, and I do feel like there were things in Space Ghost that were rejected by our boss that I think we always sort of pocketed and said, that's funny.
Right.
You know, and maybe it would come back, but no, all that other stuff was just an exciting time. It was fun to sort of create this other world and do this stuff there. So I'm looking at like Bus of the Undead and Old Drippy, and I remember where the germs of some of those ideas came from. I mean, like Old Drippy, like I had a roommate who we just had this war of attrition over who was going to do the plates, and we just kept stacking the plates in the sink until finally one day it was like you're trying to eat dinner with an egg beater as a utensil, and you're like, all right, it's fine, it's time. We need to both work together to solve this problem. You'd find a giant sheet of mold in there. All that stuff about Memphis in Bus of the Undead. I used to work on a boat that went through Memphis on the Mississippi River. I just remember someone talking about it. Oh, they have catfish?
They light up the bridge?
Catfish is wonderful. The bridge, all lit up at night.
A question about Hand Banana. There is, in Liverpool, UK, there is some sort of big art thing. It's called Super Lamb Banana. It's like it's like the front part of a... Okay, so you don't even know. Okay, so... Because it's been speculated that you guys were inspired by that for Hand Banana, but obviously that's not the case.
No, but I'll look it up. What is it?
Yeah, Super Lamb... Here, I could send it to Super Lamb Banana.
Super Lamb Banana.
Yeah. It's like a giant yellow lamb thing.
What?
With like yeah, and this predates the Hand Banana episode.
No.
Yes, sir.
No. It predates us?
Yes, it predates you. Yes.
My God. My God.
Yes, that's
oh my God.
You're putting the glasses on.
Holy shit. And it doesn't look that far removed from it either.
Right, yeah, it's like pretty dang similar. I thought it was a dog when I first saw a picture of it, but it's actually a lamb, I guess. But yeah, looks pretty damn similar to Hand Banana.
It's a lamb?
Yeah.
It looks like a... Yeah, I guess it does look like a lamb. That is crazy, man. That is crazy. No. No, and we based it on Shake's hand. We just didn't know. That is nuts. You mind if I pause and just refill my coffee?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, of course.
All right, let's do that.
While Dave's refilling his coffee, I thought I'd pop in here and say, hey, thanks for listening to the podcast. Hope you are enjoying this interview. You can subscribe to the show wherever you get podcasts, like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and you can listen to it as well on dancingisforbidden.com. New episodes are out every Monday. And we are actually almost done covering season 2 of the show, which is my favorite season, but I'm really excited to dive into, season 3 and then eventually all the other seasons. So Hey, hope you can stick around for the ride there. It's been a great journey and just such an honor. I grew up with this show. Being able to talk to these guys is just incredible. It hasn't even fully sunk in yet. I've also interviewed other people who have worked on Aqua Teen, like Jay Edwards, MC Chris, Nick Gibbons, so feel free to give those a listen too if you want to learn more about Aqua Teen and the people behind it. Everyone who I've talked to who's worked on this show is just so cool, and I'm excited to keep talking to people and trying to get those answers that I can't find anywhere else. You know, as a fan of the show doesn't get covered as much as I think it should, so that's what I'm trying to do here. You know, while Dave was out getting his coffee, his dog was in the room, and you can actually see his dog in Aqua Teen Forever Plantasm. For example, in the shot where Meatwad is covered in dog food, at the bottom left, there's a little white dog, and that is based on Dave's dog. And little cutie pie. So Dave, he was getting coffee, and I was just sitting there staring at his dog. His dog was staring at me. Was a good time. I was starstruck. I would have asked some questions for you, but I just couldn't get anything out of my throat. But all right, Dave's coming back with his coffee. Let's jump back into it. If I could ask about how you got Mike Judge on the episode Antenna, he does a little alien voice.
Mike Judge, I initially met interviewing him for Space Ghost, and he did a very crazy, I think one of the questions I asked is, do you do any other voices? And he's like, not really. You know, I said, because at the time King of the Hill was coming out, I said, it's interesting that Hank Hill sounds an awful lot like that neighbor of Beavis and Butthead.
Tom Anderson, yeah.
And he did a funny bit with that, but then he also said, yeah, I have this one other voice. It's sort of this Hanna-Barbera villain, and I'm trying to remember what he said. It's like, lay down your weapons, beast man. And it was like, so years later, I reached out and was like, hey, would you do that guy for us? And I think he just does it for the love of the game. I don't know,
yeah.
You know.
He doesn't have to do it.
He certainly doesn't need the money, I'm sure. And he's just like, I think he just enjoyed doing it. So whenever I'd reach out, you know, he did it. It was like super cool, you know. And at the time, I think Will Forte played the other alien.
You need to tilt your head back, Carl. You must keep your blood further.
At a time before everyone realized how much of a genius that dude is. Mm-hmm. And it was like, oh my God, I can't believe we got both of these guys in this thing. So
if you could go back to 2000 and give a young, bright-eyed Dave Willis advice as he is sitting down to work on the Rabot episode for the first time ever, what advice would you give yourself, knowing everything that you know now?
I don't know if you can advise anyone to embrace dumb luck, or if you can advise dumb luck onto someone, but I think that's what it was. I mean, I really was very lucky. I was in the right place at the right time for me. You know, it was a place where I could really flourish, where my weaknesses were not always apparent, like my inability to, my stubbornness, was allowed to flourish in a place where there were very limited number of people, sort of, you know, Mike Lazo cut us loose, you know, gave us tremendous, unbelievable opportunities. Like that, had I gone to LA to seek this kind of work, it would have just crushed me. You know, I would have, I don't know that I could have hung with being an assistant for a while, certainly. But it's a very hard system to really get ahead in, and certainly to get your voice heard, or to have anything that's a unique comedic voice to cut through on any sort of platform.
Mm-hmm.
I happened to be on the ground floor. I felt like I was on the ground floor of Google, you know, in a way. And for better or worse, we were allowed to flourish and grow, and also embrace our own voice, you know. And at the time, I probably did not realize how precarious the block was when it was growing. I remember one of our ad sales guys making fun of the fact that he was like, I'd like to see you go in front of a room full of ad buyers with a ball of meat as the thing you're selling, you know. And I remember one time next to him at a urinal, and he was like, you guys did good with that show. You really pulled that shit out of the fire. And I was like, what? You know, I was like completely, I had just blinders on. Like, And on Space Ghost, I was just really working on someone's hobby. It was Mike Lazo's baby, and Matt and I were just kind of helping tend to it and take care of it. And I don't think we realized how this block could possibly fail and then it'd go away. I don't think we realized making that Aqua Teen the pilot that this could be one and done. I never even thought of it that I loved it so much that I was all in. And it's nice to be all in and have it pay off, and it's rare. And later in my career, I learned about how things can get canceled and how pilots cannot happen and how you can get fired off of things. And I was just so lucky. So I don't know. I wouldn't change a thing, but I don't know that I have any advice for myself.
So if I could talk to you about some of your other endeavors, I really would be interested to hear what you have to say about your time on Celebrity Deathmatch, because there's not a whole lot of information about that. And I see you're credited on 14 episodes, but when I track those episodes down, it doesn't really sound like you, so I'm not really sure what the deal is.
It's not me.
Really? So you had nothing to do? It's a mistake.
Yeah, I never did a voice on Deathmatch.
Oh, wow. Okay. Because did Matt Harrigan work on that?
He did. He was the head writer for a while.
So that's why I thought you were involved. But wow, okay.
I wrote a couple of them.
Really?
Yeah. Just on the side, and it was fun. But Harrigan, yeah, he was the head writer on that show, and he was head writer on Space Ghost for a while. But it was a different world. That show is very sort of regimented for a lot of reasons, and there were legal issues too. Like you had to come up with for whatever reason, you had to follow parody laws. Mm-hmm. Legally, you had to come up with a reason why this one person wanted to fight this other person to the death, I guess. And so I don't know. I wrote a little spec thing for them where it was a fight between Jeffrey Dahmer and the Fat Boys, and it's just stupid, but you couldn't really play with the form. Like, I think I had an idea where someone gets stuffed in a wood chipper and it just fills the arena with blood and it just gets stuck, and they had to have a pain delay so that they had to go to alternate programming while they figure out what's up with the wood chipper. And it was a show that was very driven by one guy who would just pitch these ways to do it, and you're just doing carpentry work for someone else who's
sure.
The general contractor. But it was fun.
So I want to ask about Monster Christmas, the children's book that you wrote with Bob Pettit. Well, I don't know that you wrote it with him, but he worked on it as well.
Oh my God! Well, you're going deep. Yeah, we wrote it together. Well, Bob is our longtime background artist, and he did some of the initial illustrations, and then we got another guy, Ben Bowling, involved. I think we just talked about this idea, and maybe this is before, obviously, Hotel Transylvania, and but it was after Mr. Show had done that Monster Mash skit. So I was like, well, I don't know. We cranked it. I think it's cute. It's great, but we also didn't know what we were doing, and we were like, well, let's self-publish it. And I think we've sold, I don't know, 20 of these worldwide. But I'm proud of it. I think it's great. I read it to my kids back when they were little, and
mm-hmm. My question is, where can we get that? Because all I can see it on is Amazon, so I bought it there, but it doesn't work. Like, all the pages are like messed up or something. So
what?
I don't even know where I can buy that.
I think it's available on Apple Books.
Okay.
It should be.
I don't have an iPad or anything, so I can't. I don't know that it will let me buy it there on my computer, but I can check.
I'll see if I've just got a hard file of it. I can just send it to you.
I was say, Christmas is coming up. You should get that back on Amazon. Get it working again.
Well, the thing is so tricky. It's like, how do you even, like, I think we did it like right when I first joined Twitter very early on. But even then it was like, you like, how many times do you tweet about something, you know? And you're like,
right, yeah.
I struggle like that with Plantasm. I'm like, look, the world that cares is going to find it, and the world that doesn't is not going to, no matter how many times you tweet about it. But you feel like I'm a one-man PR machine for what I'm doing, you know? And that's what it is to be a creative nowadays anyways. But I'll check that out. But I thought I think it's designed ideally for Apple, the Apple Books program. But if you have an iPhone, it should work.
I want to ask about two things that you are working on that you've mentioned in other podcasts to see if there's any development with those. So first of all, you talked about a comedy pilot for Comedy Central. It was a future Western.
Jeez. Did I talk about that? Okay.
Yeah, you did. It was in the past year. I mean, if it doesn't ring any bells, then...
No. It definitely rings bells. We just finished it yesterday.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's animated. Stars Sam Richardson and Dan Fogler and Natalie Morales. I'm in it. We've got some other great people, Johnny Pemberton, James Austin Johnson. And it's like a future where I'm doing it with Casper Kelly. The future, half the country's underwater and Texas takes over the other half by force and introduces the codes of the Old West. It's about a traveling judge in New Texas.
New Texas.
And it's probably, I don't know if I'm even allowed to talk about it, but
yeah, I don't want to get you in trouble.
Yeah, we made the pilot and we just finished it yesterday, and it'll get focus tested, and then they'll decide whether they want to make more or not.
The other thing I've heard you mention was something. This is from memory now. It was like a halfway house with superheroes. And I remember there was a character you mentioned named Ron or Ronnie or something like that.
Ronnie, yeah. No, that was called the Outhouse, and it was a halfway house where guys had so it was a script we wrote for Adult Swim, and it just didn't get picked up. But these three idiot, not really criminals, just disadvantaged people who lived in a halfway house, but they had superpowers, but they weren't like super villains. Like if they were smart, they'd figure out a way to use it for villainy. And instead, this guy Ronnie could draw anything, and it was like Harold and the Purple Crayon, only just like evil, but just like mid-40s and angry at the world, but not capable of doing anything about it.
I'm bummed that didn't work out. I was hoping there'd be more Ronnie representation out there, good or bad.
Yeah, I am too. I am too. It was really funny. It sort of tapped it into the Carl Dirtbag side of me. I did that with a guy, Keith Fogelsong, who's running Hit Monkey for Hulu now. But Keith and I like to work together too. And he's great.
Okay, I have a couple fan questions here for you. First of all, a question from me. You of course have reference Rush throughout your work. You have the Spirit Journey Formation anniversary episode. You have the late great Neil Peart in the 2007 film. I was wondering what your favorite Rush album is.
You know, I don't own the discography, but I think Power Windows might have come out when I was in high school, and I just thought it was like the deepest thing. And later on, I had to get a little older to go, oh, okay, all right, the poetry here is not super great.
Not as good as I thought.
But I think I still just responded to just the math rock of them. And of course, I'm of that certain era, like where I admire them. And I think I was right on the edge of right before I started to go, hey, this indie rock here is pretty neat. Maybe it doesn't all have to be classic rock that I grew up with.
Right. I have a question for you from a super fan This guy is so obsessed with you that he left his comfortable job at Turner to work on your silly food show. This is a fan by the name of J. Wade Edwards, and his question for you is, what is your favorite baseball stadium?
Jay was our first editor and producer on the show and helped establish the language of the show and just the timing of the show, and was an important pillar to the show. But he and I are both Braves fans from way back, and we try to do a baseball trip every year. I would probably say PNC Park in Pittsburgh. Just really nice, just looking out over the river, and Permane Brothers sandwiches and hoagies and whatnot. I thought that was pretty beautiful layout. But the Truist Park in Atlanta is pretty no slouch. I don't think Jay's been, since he moved to LA. I don't think he's been to the Truist yet. So
he'll have to check it out then.
He will.
So I have a question for you from Carson, and I understand if you can't answer this one, but Carson wants to know what order the 10 AquaDonks were produced in. Were they done in upload order or at a certain time depending on who was editing between the 6 editors?
My God. Man, I don't know if I could tell you. But I think we did do I think we wrote the 2 ham bananas together, and then I think we were like, let's make these 2 separate ones and make them sort of the bookends of the thing. So that might have been the first, seems like that was the first one that we thought to do.
Sure.
No, other than that, no, I have no clue.
Listener Shinsuke wants to know how you and Matt came up with the voices and characterizations for the Moonanites.
When we wrote them initially, I mean, that I was using sort of a version of the Master Shake voice I was doing just because it was just so dickish and pompous. Mm-hmm. But it was like the pomposity of just some adolescent punk. And I think we had written kind of the same way, but once Matt got in the booth, we pitched it up, and then we just changed it right on the spot because it just felt like was too similar to Ignignokt. So then so sometimes would be a hype man, and then sometimes would bring his own flavor and just over caffeinated energy to things. And it sort of was a nice play against this sort of mild, lordly, like high-minded insults of Ignignokt for to just be hopping around and just throwing stuff at it. And it in a weird sort of way, I think Matt is kind of sort of channeling some side of himself. So yeah, that's kind of how it changed.
My last listener question is from Rooster. Rooster says, I noticed that the second to last Aqua Teen episode, which is the one where Meatwad has like a family, and the final Squidbillies episode both focused on a younger character, Meatwad and Rusty, having to grow up and become mature. I was wondering if that was a coincidence, or does this theme have a personal connection to Dave?
Well, with the Rusty thing, I think Jim and I were sort of like, it's tough to close out a series, and it's tough to do it well. I mean, I just watched the finale, not to compare us to Atlanta, but because Atlanta's a great show, but I watched the finale last night and I thought it was awesome. But maybe I liked it because it didn't really try to embrace just the entirety of this series, which is just so vast. And I mean, with Squidbillies, I think we thought, well, the natural thing would be Rusty would get out, and then how does he's been broken up with Tammy for a long time. You know, they would have to get back together. So there was kind of a lot of figuring out how that would work in a believable and in a satisfying, fashion. So that one in particular, we wanted it to feel right. And there was an episode where he had his kid, Macho Man, and I felt like we ended that episode perfectly. You're just with him and his kid, and you're hearing all the other characters bitch about him in the background, but it's exactly that. It's just background. So we wanted it to feel right. With Aqua Teen, I don't know if we put that much as much feeling into it. I mean, I wanted it to feel like to stir some emotion, but we graphed Meatwad as an old man. It's just funny to imagine Meatwad as an old man with a family and settled down. And so that was different. And also, we were telling the world it was the final episode, and it wasn't. And there was going to be one more final episode that we don't tell anybody about. So it felt funny to lean into maybe the pretension of that moment, and then have some 10th episode.
In a previous interview, you mentioned working in Alaska. I wasn't sure if you were joking or not. Is that true? Did you really?
Yeah, I when I got out of college, I did a lot of odd jobs for like two or 3 years, really, before I cut fish in Alaska, and I worked as a deckhand on a riverboat on the Mississippi for about 6 months. It's was a lift op at a ski resort, worked at Yellowstone National Park. I just kind of did what they call a gap year, couple gap years.
You also worked on Atlanta rap videos, I heard. And
I did.
We could kind of see some of that expertise in the special features of Plantasm during that music video, where you are blowing wind in a beard. I could see your expertise at hand right there. So, but yeah, that's really cool about like all those odd jobs. I couldn't tell if you were joking about the Alaska thing specifically, but that's awesome.
No. It was real. I kind of feel like every kid ought to do it, when they get out of school. It was a nice perspective.
Something that really interests me is on the Radio Labyrinth podcast, you were talking about how through most of your life, you didn't really get the Grateful Dead until you got into your 50s, and now you are really big into them. And that's how, obviously, like, I'm not in my 50s, but that's how I feel, is because I've tried to listen to them and I just don't get it. So I was hoping you could give me an album or a song that I could listen to on my 50th birthday and see if it clicks.
Oh my God. Well, I wouldn't be a great source for that, but I always kind of like the Dead. I like their sort of very classic songs. It was the drums in space and the live aspect of it that I just thought it felt a little bit like a bandwagon, especially when I was in college and people were into it. And I was like, this sounds like just a bunch of retirees, just, like singing with broken vocal cords. And I just didn't get it. And I think having Sirius XM and that Grateful Dead and the Big Steve Hour, like, I love that guy. And he was a roadie for them. I always wanted to use his voice in a cartoon. So maybe I would advocate that guy talking about it, and I would advocate the Amazon, What a Long Strange Trip It's Been. I think it's what it's called, that 6-part documentary. I know that's a big investment for someone who does not like this, but I'm telling you, you get it's a charming document. And I think it's interesting that someone like Bob Dylan would be so burned out in the 80s that he would say, I wanted to be a member of the Grateful Dead. Like, it's more of an experience. And Matt Harrigan took me to my first Dead show last year. And I know it's not the Dead, it's Dead and Company, but it was a marvel. And I loved it. And I ran into one of our animators there, Matt Jenkins. And it's amazing to see a guy like John Mayer, who I know started his career in Atlanta working at a studio we used to work at, answering phones. But you see a guy like that who's a superstar, who's got unbelievable talent, and instead he's just hanging back and trying to play with the ensemble, Bob Weir and all these old guys. And it really sort of speaks to the music. It's just a vibe. I don't know. It's hard to say. I would not call myself a Deadhead by any stretch, but I admire it to the point where my wife is very insistent that I don't turn it to that station. And, and I think you also reach a point where you start to look back on certain music you liked. There was a guy like Robin Hitchcock. I just saw him recently.
And I laughed like I always do. And I cried like I cried for you. And Balloon Man blew up in my hand.
And it was a lark. I saw him on a lark. I haven't probably listened to him in 20 years. It was a great show. And then I started went on a Google deep dive, and it was like the Grateful Dead covered one of his songs, Chinese Bones, and it's on YouTube, and it's just like, that's so crazy. You're at this place where it's like it kind of comes, you're doing new stuff and you see yourself branching out, but you're also kind of coming full circle, So I don't know. There's a beauty to it, maybe, that I can't explain properly on a podcast.
Okay, so I just have a few questions about some of your favorite things. So what is your favorite band and or album?
I mean, I saw Pavement recently, and just it brought so much joy to me. At times it felt like the soundtrack of my young adult life. We did that Pavement episode of Space Ghost. So in a way that was kind of full circle too, and as far as in terms of an all-timer, that would be probably a pretty good pick. Album, I think over my lifetime, I keep going back to Exile on Main Street and Astral Weeks as two just albums that always seem to have something new for me. I'll forget about them for years, and then I'll pick them back up, and
Favorite film and or television show?
Film, for lack of a better answer, maybe Bottle Rocket, just because it hit me right at the right time.
What the hell are you wearing? Yeah. It's a jumpsuit. Clay, look at this guy. He looks like a rodeo clown. He looks like a little banana. Where are you from anyway, man? I'm from around here. This guy used to mow our lawn. No shit. Yeah, he was great. Clipping the hedges, sweeping up, mowing the lawn. What was the name of your little lawn mowing company? The Lawn Wranglers?
I'm not familiar with that. I'll have to look it up.
Really? Yeah, it's Wes Anderson's first movie, and Owen Wilson and Luke Wilson's first movie. And
oh, wow.
Yeah. You've not seen that?
No.
Oh man, you're in for a treat. It's great. It's great, and it's crazy. It's like a vacation in France, like 4 years ago. I was up in sort of Normandy area, and just grabbing some baguettes to hop in a car to take off somewhere else. And I see down the street, about 50 yards away, this guy in a seersucker suit and a bob haircut, and I was like, "I'll be damned, that is Wes Anderson." And and so I walked past him, and I was not going to stop, but I mean, in the middle of a deserted street in the middle of nowhere, France, and I was like, I kept walking, did not even alter my stride. I was like, "Hey, Bottle Rocket is my favorite movie," and just kept going. And then he stopped me and was like, "Oh, that's great," And then so we talked for 5 minutes. But I was like,
wow, yeah.
And of course, I mean, when I turned 50, I made my kids watch the Godfather trilogy with me. But but yeah, Bottle Rocket always hit me at the right time. It was the right movie for me. It's so incredibly funny. We still quote things from it. As far as TV shows go, I probably don't have anything very interesting to say there. That everyone else doesn't. The Sopranos, The Wire, but I will put a plug in for Patriot on Amazon, which is like easily top 5 shows of all time for me, and
wow, okay.
Utterly disappointing that they didn't get to make more than 2 seasons. Steve Conrad, and he made another interesting thing for I think it was AMC. I don't know who he made. Perpetual Grace Limited, which is also interesting, but man, Patriot is straight up just funny. The same thing. It's just got its own unique vibe, and I would urge anyone to watch the 2 seasons of that show.
I'll have to check that out as well.
Yeah.
Favorite book?
I don't know if I have anything interesting for you on that one. I mean,
that's all right.
I mean, on my nightstand right now is the new George Saunders and the new Cormac McCarthy. I'm excited about both of them if I can get through this this book that's kind of bogging me down right now. I'm kind of half interested. I'm eyeing these other two. I'm trying to think. I did read Moby Dick for the first time like 4 years ago, and I was like, oh, all right. I see where all the praise comes from.
I see why it's a classic novel, I guess.
Melville's pretty, he's pretty decent.
He's got the Dave stamp of approval on that one.
It's crazily accessible in a way that I think I stayed away from it because it's just like, oh my God, I don't want to power through that. And it's fantastic. It's definitely one of those books where I feel like everybody should read this.
So since you make a television show about fast food products, what is your favorite fast food burger joint?
That I can answer. I am, but I'm occasionally torn. I have a weakness for Steak and Shake. They have a Wisconsin cheddar burger that I like. I'm not sure why, but yeah, that Steak and Shake. I'll if it's a road trip, I'll look for a Steak and Shake. And Crystals, I like Crystals. It's garbage. I know it's garbage. I know I'm putting garbage into my system and killing myself slowly, but I like Crystal's Chicks and Taco Bell, which I know there was a guy, a comedian who used to just search for Taco Bell and diarrhea and just retweet those. And it never ceased to make me laugh. But hey, I mean, a Taco Bell bean burrito, man.
Can't go wrong with
it.
It's a
very simple staple.
There you have it, my conversation with Dave Willis. The podcaster in me is like, dang it, I should have followed up on this, or I should have asked this instead. But then the Aqua Teen fan in me, you know, I've been a fan of Aqua Teen since I was 10. I'm now almost 30. The Aqua Teen fan in me is like, you know, to quote Dave, oh my God, holy shit. So it's kind of this duality, but I'm really happy with how it turned out. I hope you enjoyed listening to it. You may be asking, hey man, where's that Carl part that you were talking about? Carl didn't make an appearance until the very end of our interview, so you'll hear him shortly. Hold your horses. I really appreciate how generous Dave was with his time and how willing he was to talk. You know, one of my favorite answers that Dave gave was when I was asking for a Grateful Dead recommendation, and he's like, well, I'm not a Deadhead, but you gotta listen to the 6-hour documentary, and then also you gotta listen to the radio archives. I think he's more of a Deadhead than he really thinks he is. Anyways, I'm hoping this isn't the only time that Dave will come on the podcast, and I know that we'll definitely have more questions for him as we continue to weave our way through Aqua Teen Hunger Force and just find more questions that we can't find answers to. But anyways, in the meantime, the best way to support Dave is buy Plantasm, and I really mean this. The future of Aqua Teen genuinely rides on the success of that film. The better the film does, the more likely it is to come back. Everybody wants it to come back, and I mean everybody who works on the show, everybody I've talked to, they just really want this show to come back, and we are the only ones that can make that happen by buying the film. So if you've bought it, good on you. If you haven't, I mean, hey, it's $20. $20 to get your favorite show to come back. That's not too bad. That's not a bad deal. Links in the show notes for how to find Dave. He's on Twitter at DaveWillis2 and Instagram at DaveWillisShakeTable. So again, links in the show notes if you want to follow Dave. He's always doing some fun stuff on social media. But again, thank you for listening. You know, it's because of you listeners and you patrons that I just kept doing this and got to speak to Dave Willis, something I never thought would happen. And of course, thank you to my wonderful wife, Hannah, for supporting me. I'm just so thankful to everybody for making just this crazy thing happen. So normally this is where I shout out our number one in the Hood G tier patrons. But, you know, towards the end of the interview, Meatwad and Carl showed up and they're like, hey, let us do it. So I was very surprised there. I didn't know if I would see those guys, but they showed up. Take it away, fellas.
I'd like to give a shout out to Sean and Ian and Captain Buford. I salute you. I don't know what member of the armed forces he's from, Captain Buford, but I honor your sacrifice and your service so that you can support this podcast.
And what else? Brain? Oh, no. No, that's Brian. Brian, that's a good Irish boy. Robinson and Reverend Raven 46. I'll have you know I was raised Catholic. I rejected it because they don't understand that man is flawed and that sometimes he just got to get his rocks off. Reverend Raven 46, you the man. Merry Christmas. Everyone should say Merry Christmas during the holidays. Ridiculous that the happy holidays. Merry Christmas, Reverend Raven 46.
Since Carl's here, I actually have a question for you. How do you feel about Foreigner announcing their farewell tour?
Oh, I'll be there front and center. And you know what? It feels like the first time. Oh, yeah. It feels like the first time, even though I've seen them 37 times. Every time it feels like the first time. I never understand why they don't have their own group of Foreigner heads. I thought about starting that. Love it. Cold as ice, baby.
Dancing is forbidden. Dancing is forbidden.
It's kind of interesting because our first movie was very, was long and unwieldy. And like I said, we were making it with a skeleton crew. And I think if we'd have gone in and said, hey, let's fix these aspects or do a little bit of a rewrite on it, it would have taken us another 2 years. It would have just been forever. And we were making shows at the time. And it just, so the first movie kind of came out as sort of a weird, there's, nothing out there like it for better or worse,
Mm-hmm.
And I still love those first 5 minutes, I think, just kick ass, and we couldn't keep that pace and it's almost like 2 hours long, and
It's long, yeah.
I was joking with someone recently that we went by the Terra Theater is a sort of famous theater in Atlanta, and it's closing, and it's been around ever since I've lived here and longer. And we went to a number of different theaters to see the Aqua Teen movie, the first one when it first came out. And that was the first one I went to. And it was like a 7:00 showing. So it was early. There weren't that many people. But I do remember during that Mastodon song with the snacks.
Don't watch. Don't watch. You came here, watch it. Don't like it, walk out. We still have
An elderly couple were hurriedly hustling up the aisle. Like they were like, now I'm definitely sure that this is not Howard's End. Like I've got that. I did not see Merchant or Ivory in the opening credits. What is this? I do remember we got one review from this guy in Premiere Magazine, which was around at the time. And he gave us 100 on a scale of 1 to 100. And that's how they rated movies. And he just said it was more surrealistic than Dali's Andalusia. And I think he was tongue in cheek, but I think he was like, I've not seen anything
right
come out of the studio machine that's
mm-hmm.
anything like this.